The whole coding world is just buzzing right now. And a lot of that buzz is around AI, especially tools that work right where we often live, the terminal.
Yeah, it's really changing things. We're seeing this wave of AI tools that just, slot right into your command line.
Makes complex stuff feel way simpler somehow.
Exactly. And what's really cool, I think, is how they bring these like super powerful AI models directly into that terminal environment.
Oh,
It's familiar, right?
totally. It
Yeah.
stops being this external thing you call out to and becomes more like an assistant that's right there with you.
An integrated responsive assistant. Yeah.
So today we're doing a deep dive into Google's latest player in this game, Gemini CLI. Our mission basically is to unpack what it is, figure out what it can actually do for you, and then we've got this great practical example.
Oh, yeah. The GraalVM one.
That's the one, where it took a project, re-implemented it, and even compiled it into a self-contained binary using GraalVM.
Which is, not exactly straightforward usually.
Not at all. But it did it with, well, surprising ease, according to our sources. So this dive is really your shortcut to understanding how these tools can genuinely streamline some pretty complex development work.
Right. And Gemini CLI, it's not like it just appeared out of nowhere. It's kind of Google's answer to tools we've already seen, like Anthropic's Claude Code.
And OpenAI's Codex CLI.
Exactly. Everyone's seeing this need, this desire to have AI right there in the command line workflow.
So let's get into the basics. What is Gemini CLI specifically?
Okay, so it's Google's tool. It's a terminal-based AI agent, and importantly, it's free and open source.
Free and open source, okay. And platform support.
Pretty much everywhere you'd expect. Windows, macOS, Linux, so cross-platform.
That's good. Covers the bases. What's powering it? Which model?
It uses the Gemini 2.5 Pro model, a pretty powerful one.
Right. Isn't that the same one behind Google Jules, their developer assistant?
Yeah, exactly. So it's got that same serious capability baked in, gives it a solid foundation.
And you mentioned free. Let's talk about that, because that seems pretty significant here.
It really is. The standard use limits are, well, quite generous. You get 60 model requests per minute.
60 per minute. Wow.
And up to 1,000 requests per day, all at no charge.
That's not just a token-free tier. That's enough to actually use it day to day, isn't it?
Absolutely. It lets you really integrate it into your workflow without constantly worrying about hitting a paywall. You can experiment, try things out.
It makes it much more practical, like a natural extension of how you already work, just smarter.
Precisely. It's about making these advanced AI capabilities accessible right from your command line without that cost barrier right at the start.
Okay, so we know what it is. It's accessible. But the big question, what can it actually do, like for your projects? Can it, say, start something new?
Oh, definitely. That's one of the core things. It can, create new folders, kick off a project structure, handle all that initial setup right from the prompt.
Okay. And what about existing code if you've already had a project going?
Yeah, it's really useful there, too. It can help you explore the code base, understand it better, implement new features based on your descriptions, even do refactoring.
And I saw something about generating images and video. That seems different for a CLI tool.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. It integrates with Google's VO model for that. So you could theoretically ask it to generate visual assets, too. It's quite broad.
So how does it do all this stuff? Does it have built-in commands or something?
Exactly. It comes with a set of built-in tools. These tools are what let it interact with your system. Write code, run commands, debug things, all based on your natural language instructions.
Is there a way to see what tools it has?
Yep, simple command. Just type tools right in the Gemini CLI interface. It'll list everything it can use.
Okay, cool. Could you give us a flavor? What kinds of tools are we talking about?
Sure. They fall into a few categories, like file system tools.
For managing files, presumably.
Right. Listing, reading, writing files. Even batch processing. You could maybe ask it to, I don't know, rename all .jpeg files to .jpg in this directory, stuff like that.
Handy. What else?
Then you've got shell tools. These let it run shell commands, interact with Git, run build scripts, test scripts, basically interact with your system like you would.
Okay, so it can actually execute things.
Within limits, and usually after asking for permission, yes. There are also web tools for fetching stuff from URLs, doing Google searches to get real-time info.
Ah, so it can ground its answers in current data.
Exactly. And memory tools are crucial. They help it remember context within a session or even across a project.
So it doesn't forget what you were just talking about.
Right. And finally, token embeddings tools for more technical stuff like counting tokens, generating embeddings for similarity searches, that kind of thing.
That sounds pretty comprehensive out of the box. But what if you need something more specific, something it doesn't have a built-in tool for?
This is where it gets really interesting and potentially very powerful. It supports something called MCP.
MCP.
Model Context Protocol. Basically, it's a way for you to define and plug in your own custom tools or connect to external services.
Like what kind of services?
Think GitHub, Jira, maybe Google's own Imagen for image generation, or VO, like we mentioned. You define these connections, these MCP servers, in a settings file .geminisettings.json.
So you could teach it to interact with your specific APIs or workflows.
Precisely. It opens the door to much more advanced, tailored automation, interacting with almost any API, really. It's a big deal for extensibility.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, thinking bigger picture again, how does this Gemini CLI relate to Gemini Code Assist, the IDE extension one?
Good question. They're definitely part of the same family, same ecosystem.
So they work together.
Yeah, they show the core AI technology, the same Gemini models, and even the usage limits we talked about. They're designed to complement each other.
How so?
Well, Code Assist is all about the IDE experience, right? Extensions for VS Code, JetBrains IDEs. It gives you UI features like inline code completions, help with GitHub PR reviews, tighter integration with CI/CD pipelines, Google Cloud tools.
So CLI for the terminal fans, Code Assist for the IDE lovers.
Kind of. You get the quick, flexible command line interaction with Gemini CLI, and then the richer, visual, more integrated experience inside your IDE with Code Assist. Best of both worlds, potentially.
Right, catering to different workflows or even different tasks. Okay, that clears things up.
Yeah.
Now, let's get to that practical example, the juicy part.
The Adel tool reimplementation.
Right. So the challenge, as laid out in the sources, was taking this command line tool called Adel, which was originally written in Zig,
Which is a relatively new, interesting language itself.
and re-implementing it completely in Java. But then, the kicker, compiling that Java version into a native binary using GraalVM.
And GraalVM, as you mentioned, is super powerful for making fast native Java apps, but notoriously finicky. The learning curve can be steep, lots of configuration needed usually.
Exactly. Getting those native compilations to work without errors often involves some deep magic, or at least a lot of Googling and tweaking.
Definitely. It's not typically something you'd expect an AI to just handle smoothly.
So, first things first, how do you even get Gemini CLI installed? Is it complicated?
No, actually, it's really straightforward. It's an NPM package. So just npm install-g at Google Gemini CLI.
Okay, standard npm install. What happens the first time you run it?
It does a little setup, asks you to pick a visual theme, which is nice, and then how you want to authenticate.
What are the options there?
You can use your regular Google login, provide an API key directly, or authenticate via Google Cloud's Vertex AI if you're using it in that context.
Simple enough. And when it's actually working on the code, like writing files or changing things, how does that interaction feel? Does it just do it?
No, and this is important. Similar to other tools like this, it asks for permission first. If it needs to use a tool like WriteFile to modify your project, it'll prompt you, can I do this?
Okay. So you have a chance to say yes or no. Give you control.
Exactly. You're not just handing over the keys completely. You get that visibility, that final say before changes are made. It's reassuring.
Good. Okay, now for the shocking part, as the sources called it, the code quality and the decisions it made during this Adel re-implementation, what stood out?
Right. This was really impressive. It wasn't just functional code. The choices it made were, well, surprisingly good. Like for the build system in Java.
Maven.
Nope. It chose Gradle, which, is often seen as the more modern, flexible choice compared to Maven, especially for new projects.
Interesting. Okay, a solid choice. What else?
For actually building the command line interface part of the tool, it picked the Picocli library.
Picocli. Yeah, that's a great library for Java CLIs. Makes things really easy, nice help messages.
Exactly. It's an excellent choice, widely respected. Again, not just a choice, but a good choice, reflecting current best practices. It suggests a deeper understanding than just stringing code together.
That is pretty impressive. It's like it has opinions, good ones, based on the state of the Java ecosystem.
It really felt like that. But the GraalVM part was perhaps even more striking.
Right, the tricky part. How did it tackle that?
Well, initially, it actually used JLink, which is a standard Java tool for creating a custom runtime image, packaging your app with just the necessary parts of the JVM.
Okay, a reasonable first step for a distributable Java app.
But then, when it was specifically prompted to use GraalVM instead to get that true native binary, it just did it. It updated all the necessary Gradle settings for native compilation.
Wow. Updated everything.
Yeah, and here's the really significant bit. During that GraalVM compilation, errors popped up, which frankly is almost expected with GraalVM, especially on the first try.
Happens all the time. Debugging those can take hours.
But Gemini CLI fixed them. It identified the compilation errors and added the specific, sometimes obscure GraalVM configuration needed to resolve them.
It debugged its own GraalVM build errors.
Effectively, yes. That's revolutionary for anyone who's wrestled with GraalVM configs before. It suggests it's not just pattern matching, it's actually reasoning about the build process and the error messages.
That is genuinely shocking.
Yeah.
Okay, so it fixed the tricky build stuff.
Yeah.
Did it handle the more mundane project stuff too, like readmes?
It did. Apparently, it didn't update the readme and doc.ignore files automatically at first, but when the user pointed it out, asked it to fix them.
It corrected them.
Yep, it sorted them out correctly.
Yeah.
It also showed some smarts around Java versions. It used SDKMN, a popular tool for managing multiple JDK installations.
Very common.
And when it switched to GraalVM for the native build, it actually switched the active JDK distribution to a GraalVM one using SDKMN.
Whoa, okay, that's real environmental awareness. It
Yeah.
understands you need a specific JDK type for that task.
Exactly. It's not just generating code in isolation, it's interacting with the development environment in an intelligent way.
So, after all that,
Hmm?
the build process, the debugging, the JDK switching, what was the end result? Did they get a working native binary?
They absolutely did. After making sure a GraalVM JDK was installed via SDKMN, the command was simple. Grayloo native compile.
And out popped an executable.
And a really compact one, too. The sources mentioned it was somewhere between like 16 and 19 megabytes, depending on the OS.
That's tiny for a Java application.
Yeah,
Compared to bundling a whole JRE.
exactly. That's the magic of GraalVM native images. And the crucial part, it worked.
How did they test it?
They ran the command the tool was supposed to provide.
Okay.
That'll create my first ADR for Gemini CLI.
Yeah?
And it worked perfectly. Created the addr folder, created the new architecture decision record file inside it, just like the original Zig tool, a fully functional, self-contained native command line tool.
Built essentially by the AI, navigating the complexities of Java, Gradle, and GraalVM. That's quite a feat.
It really is.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up then, bringing this deep dive together. The overall experience using Gemini CLI sounds like it was, similar in feel to other AI assistants in the terminal.
Right, the conversational interaction, they're asking for permission.
But the standout features seem to be its speed and, crucially, that remarkable code quality and the intelligent decisions it made, especially with GraalVM.
Absolutely. The ability to take a complex task like re-implementing a tool and compiling it natively with GraalVM, something that would require significant expertise and time for a human and handle it so effectively, even fixing build errors. That's a major step forward.
It really lowers the barrier, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You could potentially tackle projects using technologies like GraalVM without needing to become a deep expert in them first.
Exactly. It lets developers leverage these powerful technologies much more easily, potentially creating highly performant, self-contained apps with, well, surprising ease.
And we shouldn't forget the integration with Gemini Code Assist. That bridge between the quick terminal access and the richer IDE experience seems really valuable.
Gives you options, lets you work how you want to work, but with AI assistance available in both places.
So this leads us to the final thought, the one for you listening to mull over.
Yeah, what does all this actually mean for you, whether you're learning, developing professionally, or just, curious about this stuff?
How might tools like Gemini CLI fundamentally change the way we approach learning new tech? Or building complex apps? Or even just quickly prototyping an idea?
By lowering that barrier to entry so significantly, by speeding up that whole journey from just a concept to an actual running executable, what does that unlock?
What new possibilities open up for you in your own projects when AI can handle this level of complexity? Something to think about.